Hello and welcome back to the only show that talks more ship than Sean Connery describing how he drinks his martinis. I'm Max,
I'm Matt.
And I'm Luke.
and this is Force for Thought.
Did I give you the signal way too early?
You did, yeah.
I panicked.
Did you? I don't know. I don't have my headphones. I was really relying on you
Yeah.
for it.
The timing was definitely off there. That's fine. We'll fix it in post.
Yeah, it's super easy. Love
So
doing
you're cute and charming. That was a great joke.
that. Thank you. All right. Anyway, as the intro joke implied, today we are doing a ranking of some of our favorite ships in Star
I
Bars,
can't
baby.
unhear it now.
What?
How
The
Sean
ship.
Connery ships his drink. It's so dumb. I've been watching a lot of James Bond lately.
Have you?
Fun
Serious?
fact, it's all pretty bad.
It's not bad. It's just very rapey. The Sean Connery
I
ones in
mean, yeah.
particular, like they're good. Goldfinger's probably one of my favorites, but he definitely forces himself upon what's her name in that one,
I like From Russia with Love a lot. The train one.
Pussy Galore. Of course, how could I forget Pussy?
Yeah, I was like, oh, she's got a really common name.
I almost named my daughter that.
Part of me thinks it's I must be giving it undue hate because I also am a huge fan of Burn Notice, and I've been rewatching that, which is just James Bond improved upon in every possible way. They made him American, monogamous. All the gadgets are
B actor,
it's-
forget the guy's name.
It's not better though because it's James Bond mixed with MacGyver. The thing that I like about James
Exactly.
Bond are the gadgets that he gets from Q. The Q scene is like my favorite scene in every James Bond movie, which is why I think the best James Bond is wow, I cannot think of his name right now. The second one. Not the second
Roger
one. 'Cause that's yeah, Roger Moore. Thank you.
You think? Yeah, we both think Roger Moore's the best James
Yeah,
Bond.
Roger Moore's the
Really?
best.
Because it's the kookiest.
Who's the second guy? I'm forgetting his name now.
He's only in one movie.
George
Lazenby?
Lazenby?
Lazenby. But I like Roger Moore's because he is the kookiest and his gadgets are like the most out there. I don't know.
The gadgets are fun, but we
Live or
really,
Let Die.
we
So
really
good.
grew up in the golden age of James Bond. Not because the best movies were coming out in our era, which maybe they were, maybe they weren't, but
They weren't.
James Bond is made for video games. It is such a better video game franchise than a movie franchise. I mean, just the idea of it for one, but
Like Jaws, because in my mind, playing the games, you think Jaws and like Odd Job are gonna be way bigger parts in the movies,
yeah,
and they're not.
Real
No.
quick, what era of James Bond do you think we were raised in?
Pierce Brosnan,
Okay.
right?
You think that's the best?
I think it's
Mm.
completely subjective. I think they're
It's-
all about equal. I mean, Daniel Craig's probably the best actor.
I thought that's what I thought you were implying. I thought you were going to say the Daniel Craig era because I think the Daniel Craig movies are like objectively better. I prefer the Pierce Brosnan movies. Die Another Day is Matt and I watched all of them and ranked them.
Yeah.
I think that one was both of our least favorite.
Yeah,
like kind of
it
by
is.
a lot.
It's just not. It's not. It's
don't
not even
like-
fun.
You don't like
Yeah.
Diamond Face Man?
They're like,
Diamond Face Man.
that's with Halle Berry, correct?
Yeah.
That's like eating like a lime while having sex in that one scene. You're like, what is going on here? Like, why is this? Like, I think about that scene a lot because I'm just like, what
It
is
works.
happening?
Art provokes reaction.
You're still thinking about it.
I am. The Man with the Golden Gun, though, I think is my favorite Bond movie as well.
I recently watched
Oh,
a lot
Live
of
and
that
Let
one,
Die.
and it was.
Living Let Die, yeah, number two.
I was pretty disappointed with the Man with the Golden Gun because I was
Really?
excited for the Christopher Lee Count Dooku connection, and he was.
What's the connection?
He plays Count Dooku, and I didn't love
The same guy plays Saruman as plays both of those characters.
the whole mirror thing. They look for each other
Yeah.
in a mirror house. That was dumb.
Yeah.
That was fun for
No,
like
it's
one
cool.
moment.
It's cool.
And it really just invokes a question about slave labor. Like, what's the deal with this midget guy? Is he free? Knick-knack?
Knick-knack.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He
it's
is
great.
better Odd Job. I mean, they thought Odd Job was cool, and the only reason Odd Job was cool is because he was short, and so they were just like, "Oh, they like the short people." Get
he was only a little short. Like Knick-Knack wasn't a
was.
full-on midget, but in what was the GoldenEye, the video game GoldenEye, Oddjob was a playable character, and in that one he was basically a
He
midget.
could go through vents.
Yeah, he was the worst. Whenever you play with your friends, you had to like institute a rule that no one could be Oddjob because it was just unfair.
Yeah.
But in the better James Bond game, in my opinion, Nightfire, which was on the GameCube, which is the one I played a lot more,
It is better.
Odd Job
I agree.
and Knick-Knack were in it, and Odd Job was annoying because he always had the playable hat that
Oh yeah.
you spawned with that extra weapon. It was a one-hit
Yeah.
kill.
That was
And then
awesome, though.
Knick-Knack was also playable, and he was like, yeah, a quarter of the size, and it was BS.
Yeah.
But all these characters you would think from the video games are so much cooler. Like Baron Samedi, after seeing Live and Let Die, he's not even a character in the movie. He's a prop, basically.
No, he's cool as hell looking though.
He is cool as hell looking,
Yeah.
but I agree.
He
He plays zero role in the movie.
He does.
He's barely
yeah.
a character.
That said, I do like Live and Let Die quite a bit. And it has one of the best intro songs by Paul McCartney.
It's got the best intro song.
Oh, okay. Not a big fan of the Billie Eilish one?
No, not really. I like Billie Eilish. Do you? Are you? I mean, that song's
It's
good.
the only one I could think of off the top of my
Oh,
head.
okay, I was
I
gonna-
like
like-
Writings on the Wall.
I
I,
love
didn't love Spectre, but
the Adele. Yeah, this Spectre was a weird one too. I feel like we could talk. We should do more for thought for this actually.
we are
I apparently
getting,
have a lot to say.
we are getting pretty far off track. Anyway, that started because we're talking about ships. So
That's exactly how I would say it.
so we're going to do our top 5. Then before we get to number 1s, we'll do a couple honorable mentions. So here it is. Without further ado, Force for Thought's definitive ranking of the best ships in Star Wars. Matthew, we'll start with you. What is your number 5?
Yes, my number 5. Also, just a forewarning. I feel like I'm the least knowledgeable on the ships as well, so mine are gonna be pretty plain Jane. I feel like.
It's not a knowledge thing. It's just a love thing. Tell us what you love.
All right. I love the T6 Jedi Shuttle, which is Ahsoka's ship, and specifically in Ahsoka, because I think, it looks really cool physicality wise. The fact that its wings are able to turn perpendicular is really cool, and I also like that we saw the inside of the ship significantly more within the Ahsoka show. I really like that ship quite a bit.
We can talk more about this when we talk about other ships that also have gyroscopic features, but that just makes me think about all of why wouldn't all ships be like that? Because it is cool that her wings can go from like sideways to
Mhm.
horizontal, but that's just meaning her ship is rotating without the cockpit essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems like a strict improvement. Why would you want to rotate yourself instead of just rotate your wings? You
Why
know?
would? But you don't actually change direction though. So why is it better at all?
I just
Just as a
from-
defensive maneuver. I mean,
I don't
No.
think I would prefer that personally.
I think it's cool, but I
Yeah.
don't see how it's practical in the least. bit.
same. I wouldn't want that if I was flying a ship.
I think you would.
Matthew,
don't
with
think
how
you-
motion sick you get, you would need that ship. You would only be able to fly in a straight
Mm.
line, and
Exactly,
they would
that's
say,
what
"Oh,
I was
don't worry,
about to
buddy.
say."
Just turn the wings. You'll be okay."
Right, because
That's
we're used to
true.
driving cars
Hmm.
straight, more or less. Definitely not any up or down,
Yeah.
just straight and left and right. And so we'll talk about it more later. But I like the gyroscopic feature, but I feel like if it exists, why don't they all do that? It just seems so much better.
You know, we should have had a guest on this episode because our brother is actually a pilot. Maybe he could opine a little bit on the practicalities of a gyroscopic cockpit
Yeah,
and all the different directions that a plane can take. I know yaw is one.
Mm-hmm. I am familiar with yaw.
I am not.
I'm gonna go ahead and try my hand and give a definitive answer. I'm pretty sure that's the left right instead of like. Shouldn't have done it. No,
I was about to say, Alex is upset now that he's not a guest or correcting you.
because like when you're in when you're in an airplane and you want to go left, you can like tilt your left wing down and your right wing up,
Mhm.
and then you start going left. Or you can just adjust your tail fin and then you just like turn left, like as if you're driving a car, but you don't tilt at all. I believe that's yaw.
That sounds familiar. I just finished the Alphabet Squadron book, so I saw yaw a couple times. And every time I just think of a cowboy. All right. Luke, number 5.
Number 5, the N1 Starfighter from The Phantom Menace. Not Mando's. I
I
thought
was
about it.
waiting for.
Are we talking about that one, or do we have to save that one
I-
for later?
I don't believe anyone has that on their list. I was the one that
I
took all
don't.
the
know.
I don't
lists and
either.
put 'em
Okay,
all
all right. We
together.
can talk about it both. I'm glad that you did the N1 Starfighter and not Mando Starfighter. I think
Because
the N1
yellow?
is better.
Yeah,
'Cause
I mean,
yellow.
also
Yeah, yellow
I
is
think so
cool.
too.
Yellow is a big advantage.
Yeah, it's also very different from Star Wars because it's very clean. Obviously,
Yeah.
these ships came from Naboo, so that was like a very intentional design choice. They were very sleek. You know, later in Star Wars, everything had that dirty feel to it, and they didn't want that for the Phantom Menace. So I like that a lot. But in The Mandalorian, when he gets the N1 Starfighter, to me, it's like really cool for a minute because it's like, oh, that's cool. Like they're hot rodding this
Yeah.
old Starfighter. And that's like a love letter to George Lucas, who really liked hot rods and cruising and all that kind of stuff. And that was a big inspiration for him for not just Star Wars, but the film he did right before about cars.
American
American Graffiti. Thank you. So I like that aspect, but it just immediately draws like a lot of like practical questions.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how is Grogu getting back there? How did they just make that into a little compartment for him? Like, is there a seatbelt in there? Is that safe for him at all? Where's he going to put his bounties? Like, he's still a bounty hunter.
Yeah,
Like, that's a nice like leisure craft, but you can't bounty hunt in that thing.
I think it's a significant downgrade from the Razor Crest, obviously, which I'm sure we'll be talking about at some point. Plus, it's like, again, when you have a kid, you upgrade to a minivan. It's the opposite. He's literally doing the opposite.
Yes.
But it fits them so well. And I don't know if he is necessarily still a bounty hunter at the time when he gets the N1 Starfighter.
I don't know if he
What
knows
I-
either, which is also bad parenting. He doesn't-
The whole timeline with Mandalorian and what exactly how he views himself and what his actual occupation is. Like, why was he bounty hunting in the beginning? What's his life purpose? He's working with the Armorer to get Beskar and repopulate Mandalore or reinstitute Mandalore. I don't see how bounty hunting really fits into that, but it's definitely not like his purpose or his thing, like how bounty hunting is Boba Fett's thing, just because he
Mhm.
doesn't do anything else. Like, he's the best bounty hunter in the world, and that's what he does. The Mandalorian just seems to like do it on the side, in addition to all this Mandalorian regal regency stuff.
Do you think that's an insult that you're the best bounty hunter in the world in the galaxy?
Like saying you're the best driver in our local
In
community.
Yeah.
our local area, in the Tri-County area.
Sorry, I just thought of that.
Yes, I do think that would be an insult.
All right, cool.
Especially if you drop it on like a desert planet like Tatooine. That's hilarious.
And yet Greedo was never the best bounty hunter on that planet.
But he had the best vest that we know of.
Yeah,
we should
I'll give him
we should
that.
redo the best insults because that'd be a good one.
What? Oh, best food in the world.
Anyway, sorry.
I thought you were saying we should redo best costumes, but just vest themed.
All right.
All right. Well, my number 5 is
I'm guessing.
the Y-Wing.
Ooh.
It is a classic, an oldie but a goodie. It first appeared in A New Hope, not the special editions. It was in the originals, if I
Mhm.
recall. Correct? Yeah. Um,
Gold Squadron.
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know why. I always find them so captivating. A lot of people are big fans of the A-Wings. I'm also a big fan of the A-Wing, but I always preferred the Y-Wing. I
Mhm.
think they just look cooler. It's satisfying to me, the design, because it looks like a Y. Obviously, the A and the X-Wings also resemble those shapes, but the Y, to me,
Is that
is
why
the
they're-
most...
Called that? All right, sorry, go on. Not even worth it.
I've stepped on this rake too many times,
I
Matthew.
know.
I'm not going to say a word.
You do know that's why they're called that, right?
Yes!
Okay.
Thank you, Luke. And then you also get the origin story for it in Rebels, for how they kind of join the Rebel fleet after you see I don't even know what they were called during the Clone Wars, but you kind of see like the predecessors of what was the Y-Wings that would later become.
I don't remember that at all, to be honest.
No, they're in there.
It's an episode of the Clone Wars? Or you just see him in the background?
You just see them in the background. No, I think they're in the movies.
No, I kind of remember that now that you're saying that. Well, from the show, not from the movies, though. I mean, I remember seeing the ARC 170 predecessor to the X-Wing, which doesn't make that much sense because you would think the Republic starfighters would evolve into the Imperial starfighters, which
That is. I really don't want to say something wrong, but I'm like 99% sure that we see what is clearly the predecessor to the Y-Wing in the opening scene of Revenge of the Sith and the Battle above Coruscant. But I'm giving myself a 1% cop out there in case I am misremembering that. But anyways, I always like the Y-Wing. They're kind of big and slow and clunky, but they carry heavy ordnance. They're used as bombers.
Yeah.
I like that aspect. I like the different lore of all the different ships and what they different do and what their pros and cons are.
There's an actual reason that why they exist. They're not just cool looking.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and they
I
each
like
have a
that too.
specific purpose, and that's one of
Yeah.
the reasons. Like I said, I just finished the Alphabet Squadron trilogy. I liked how they kind of used the different ships and different scenarios in that
Yeah.
book. They explained it all very well.
It feels like a car manufacturer that's like their line of vehicles. It's like, oh yeah, you have the A, you have the B.
mm-hmm.
It's nice.
Yeah. All right, Matthew. Moving on to number 4s.
My number 4 is the classic Star Destroyer. I love the Star Destroyer. What?
This is what I was laughing about when I was making the list. I thought about putting my number 4 to be the Super Star Destroyer. Just to one up you. It's not. No one included the Super Star Destroyer.
That's very funny. I feel like in this podcast, and this will probably reign true for 1 and 2 specifically, but I feel like I am old reliable in the fact that, especially in this, like I said, this area, I feel like I'm not as knowledgeable as you guys, but I think the Star Destroyer is just so spooky, and it's got such good iconography within Star Wars. I would love, like, that's a ship that I would like to have like displayed. It's scary. Maybe obviously because we have a context with it, but it is just like a spooky looking ship.
Triangle.
It's triangle is scary.
Mhm.
Triangle equals scary.
Do you think
It's sharp. Everything in the Rebel Allegiance is like Rebel Alliance is kind of rounded. You know, when you think of like the
Yeah.
capital ships and everything from Mon Cala, you know, they're all these
Mhm.
big, round, bulky things. Then everything in the Empire is very sleek and sharp.
Do you think your love of Doritos influences your love of Star Destroyers, or your love of Star Destroyers influences your love of Doritos more?
I think my influence of Star Destroyers influenced the Doritos because
Yeah.
I definitely watched Star Wars before I had Doritos.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's why you love Doritos. You get you get
Yes.
a little triangle and fly it
Obviously.
right into your mouth.
Yep, especially the 3D ones.
How do you feel about the Super Star Destroyer?
I
People-
like the Super Star Destroyer. Why?
People
I
always joke about how it's like a cop out just to do the
I mean,
second Death Star in
it
Return of
is.
the Jedi, but Empire did that first with the bigger Star Destroyer, and I know that I'm gonna sound stupid getting hooked up on scale and practicalities and stuff though, but the Star Destroyer is already so big, and the Super Star Destroyer is so much bigger. At some point, it doesn't make sense to me. Like, I know the Death Star is the size of a moon, and that's too big practically, but the Super Star Destroyer is a bigger offense to that in my mind.
Yeah, when you see it described like the scale of the thing, it's hard to grasp in the movies. When you see them, you don't understand the scale of it.
I feel like the Star Destroyer is like the Titanic, and the Super Star Destroyer is like a modern day cruise ship.
The
Mm.
Titanic gets all the glory and all the iconography and
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
and it's big, but it's just not as big.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to segue that into my number 4 then,
All
because it is a
right.
cruise ship.
Bouncing
It
back.
is the Katana, Jabba's sail barge.
Oh, okay.
And that's exactly
Mm.
why I like it. I feel like it's unique. It gives a little insight into Jabba. I feel like at multiple times, maybe like in the books and stuff, people reference like pleasure yachts and everything. And I feel like
Mhm.
this is like the only time you actually get to see someone's pleasure yacht. Like, what is the Katana?
Dryden
It's-
Voss has a pleasure yacht in Solo.
There you go. And
The fact that you have a pleasure yacht and then
but
it's
that
just
feels more
in
like
the
a ship,
Dune
though.
Sea.
The thing I like about the Katana is how it does not seem like a ship. Like
It does
is.
not seem like a ship, and I was really racking my brain trying to think of what the Katana was when I saw your list. And if I'd have known that you were including non-ships, I wouldn't have stressed so much about it. It's a speeder, Maxwell. It's not
Yes.
space worthy.
No, all speeders are ships, but not all ships are speeders.
No.
Oh yeah,
You're
I don't
off the
know.
ground.
Yeah, but that's just
Off
because
the ground is your
Well, what's a ship? If you can make it into like outer
space-worthy.
atmosphere.
Yes.
What about the I don't want to say it in case it's on someone's list.
the Lat gunship? The Hoth speeders?
Yeah. Is that on anyone's list?
It's not.
No.
All right, let's talk about that. Is that a ship?
Do we ever see them go in space? We don't. And
Yeah,
they always
but
refer to
those
them as
are-
speeders,
but
but they
those
sure
are-
look like a ship.
I think they
They're-
come from outer space, presumably when we see them in Kenobi when they come to
Oh
the
yeah.
Inquisitor's Island.
Yeah. They must be ships then.
bada boom.
Confirmed.
But we don't know that.
Nope, we do. They come from outer space. There's no capital ship there.
regardless, I'm still standing my ground. All speeders are ships, but not all ships are speeders. If it's
So,
off the ground,
Luke,
it's a ship.
Luke and Leia on Endor flying those speeders through the trees. They're on a ship.
You wouldn't.
No.
Luke's
Just- okay.
Luke's land speeder with R2 and the C3PO hanging in the trunk.
You wouldn't call it a ship. You would call it a speeder. But I think, like definitionally, yes.
Well, you know what? Interesting. Do you think Luke's land speeder can go up?
No,
But why not? Because I feel like
what about pod races?
in the prequel trilogy,
they
though,
cannot
right?
go up.
They do go up. You see it
No,
go
he
up.
takes a ramp up. He hits a ramp. Cars can go up with that logic.
But then, yeah,
Hmm.
but exactly. But so why does Obi-Wan's speeder in Attack of the Clones?
The yellow one. Open
Yeah.
air, yeah.
Why is that able to get air?
Yeah.
But the land speeder is it like?
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, all the ones in Coruscant are.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But
High
I
up
mean,
in the
okay, so
air.
is that just a? I mean, that you presumably that would have to be universal, not just like, okay, this sector doesn't get the height feature.
I cannot imagine a possible world where Luke's land speeder can fly in the Coruscant skyline like all those other Coruscant speeders.
It's a well, I mean, story.
the-
I mean, I hate saying story wise, it would make sense, but like story wise, he could have just flown over everybody and not have, and Obi-Wan would not have to have had to have mind trick the stormtroopers to let them go through.
well, I
fly
mean,
over.
if you get into story wise, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Not to get into that story because that's a,
No, this is serious.
But I mean, it is Luke's land speeder. Oh, they call it a land speeder, so maybe that's different. Maybe a land speeder is
Mm.
different from a different speeder. Maybe there's air speeders and land speeders, and that's what the difference is. Air speeders can go higher in the air.
so what do you think the speeders on Endor are? Land or air?
Those are like bikes. I don't even know.
yeah. Those are the equivalents of motorcycles. I feel like.
So they
I mean,
definitely can't go
I
up
think
then.
those are
I don't
still
think
like
they can go up.
speeders, but well, I'm trying to think of examples elsewhere in the canon. can't.
I mean,
think
it's a
of
whole
any.
sequence of an Attack of the Clones of those speeders going up and down and stuff.
Yeah. Did they? Okay,
This is really breaking my brain. This
do
is
you think
unbelievable.
there's some sort of regulation that was passed? I think you can make this canonically in your head that there's some sort of regulation passed that everything has to be on the ground, X amount in the air. It's too dangerous.
Well, especially when you're by a spaceport, which Tatooine was. So maybe that's part why.
See,
Canonically, no, because you still see Coruscant around the same time. I mean, I guess
Damn,
Andor
yeah.
would be the closest, which is about 5 BBY. It was dated. So that's 5 years before A New Hope, but they're still flying through the air.
they are.
And they have open air ones. I think the difference has to be spacefaring or not spacefaring. It's not just up or
For what?
No,
Your definition of a ship?
for my
No,
definition of a
there's no-
ship. Yes.
Okay,
Whether it
okay.
can go, whether it is spacefaring.
Well, I disagree with your definition. I
But
have the
does-
katana as my fourth favorite ship.
Does your in this scenario Obi-Wan's speeder? That's not space bearing though, because there's no
Right.
roof.
Every-
It's a convertible.
Right. Everything on Coruscant, all those speeders are speeders by definition of they can't go into space.
Okay.
In my mind.
Whew, man, that is tough. What a
Alright.
dumbass thing to do is did a convertible too. By the way, now that you're that high up in the air, it's gonna be so cold all the time.
Cold, the air's gonna thin. Yeah.
Big mistake.
All right, Luke, you're number 4.
My number 4, right on pace. The Lat gunship, which we do see spacefaring in the Clone Wars. But that was always a big question in my childhood. The
Because
Clone
they
Wars,
seem very open air.
they do. The toy was 100% open air, and it had like a little opening door mechanism on the toy, which is why it's my number 4. It was an excellent toy.
Mhm.
But even when you close it, like you would pretend like, oh, close the doors, we're going to space. But then it's like these people are still exposed to the space. It's not gonna work. But I love that ship. I love the little Death Star laser cannons and the wing things that
Mhm.
the clones use. I always think about what the cooldown is on that effect, because when you see that in Attack of the Clones, and there's like that one shot of the clone using it, it is obliterating droids. Like there are people dropping bombs that are killing 4 droids at a time, and then this guy takes out 60 in one little burst of this. Like, can you not just finger on the trigger, put a book on it, and then go take a nap? You win the fight.
Well, I'm assuming that takes a lot of energy somewhere, and maybe that detracts from the ship. I don't know.
In the game, if that was in a game, you'd be able to use that once and have to move on to another weapon.
Exactly.
The cooldown on that's
Yeah.
crazy. The Lat gunship, yeah, it's kind of like the Jeep Wrangler of vehicles, right? Like you can take off the doors; it's open air, but you could also put the doors back on and take it on the
Yeah.
highway.
But it's gonna be noisy no matter what.
Yeah.
I guess that's accurate. I don't like thinking of it as the Jeep Wrangler of Star Wars ships.
Well,
Why
I have
not? That's what
spoken.
it is. I feel like
Yeah,
Uh,
it does fit. I can't refute it. But
that's a
right.
good ship. It's a good toy.
Luke, let's stick with you. What's your number 3?
number 3, I was joking about the Super Star Destroyer trying to one up Matt, but here I go. The Venator class Star Destroyer.
Okay.
I don't even know if they call it a Star Destroyer.
What
The
is-
Venator
Oh,
ship.
that's from the Republic.
The Clone Wars era Star Destroyer, the predecessor to the Star Destroyer. I think it looks just a little bit cooler than the Star Destroyer. And I was going to put the Star Destroyer on my list, but I was
Mhm.
like, oh, why would I put the Star Destroyer and not the Venator? It's just better in a little bit in every way.
I think it's a little worse in every way.
Now, it's got that middle hangar so the ships can land and take off from the center.
I do
on the
like
top.
that quite a bit. That is
does,
cool.
I feel like that makes a lot of practical sense too, because then you can have more like protection of those ships as they're landing and leaving.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
then
Because it's basically surrounded by covering fire.
I feel like they also. I feel like it makes no sense in the fact that okay, the Death Star got blown up by a little port, so let's add another port to a ship. I feel like that's just open invitation.
well, it's
Are you calling the hangar bay the port?
Yeah, like it's just
Well, maybe that's
more-
why they got rid of it. They were like, this thing is a huge liability.
All right, we gotta board that up.
Yeah, this is pre-Death Star, so maybe.
We do use it
Oh,
to
yeah, this
vent
is
our
great.
exhaust, though. I just put it in a small hole.
That's why it happened. That's funny. Yes, Max, you've talked before about how you bought that ghost chip that will be coming hopefully soon. I'm really looking forward to it. And I joked before that you should keep it at my house because I have the perfect display spot for it. And you're not going to keep it at my house. It's your
I
ship.
will
It's
not
gonna
be.
it's gonna be at your house. But I have to get something
It's
for
going to
my
go right
display
there, and I'm going to
spot.
look at it every day I work from home.
I'm leaning more towards Venator Star Destroyer Lego set. I'm not sold yet. I haven't decided.
How much does that run you?
Hundreds.
Yeah, I know, but how?
If it's in active production, I don't know. Actually, it might be I have to get like a used one or an old one, and then maybe like 1,000. I don't know.
What do you buy it though? And there's like 3 pieces missing.
Nightmare.
I bet the TVs at this guy's house is huge.
That's right. I'm gonna spend $1,000 on a Venator Star Destroyer.
All right. Matthew, number 3.
My number 3. This is my actual number 3 as well. Again, we go through these and we cut them down a little bit. But I love the U-wing. I would say this is my favorite, but spoiler, there's one little bit higher than it. But the U-wing was for Rogue One, and I feel like that fits perfectly within that era. And I don't know. I think in high school I drove a 1995 Cadillac Eldorado, which has a very long front, and so this reminds me very much of that car. It was a bitch to drive.
That's the one that you brought to college the first couple of years, right?
Yeah, the
because we used to
Batmobile.
ride around in it, but then the power steering
Yes.
died.
Yes.
And so every time we would go to Easton, you had to park in that parking lot. It was such a bitch to see you turn that wheel so slowly because it was so heavy.
Yeah, it just took multiple people to turn the wheel. So I assume the U-wing is kind of like that. But no, I really like the U-wing. I think it's practical. I like the way it looks. I feel like it fits in with that era, and I feel like it's not too flashy. I feel like the U-wing kind of goes unnoticed, but I feel like it fits in line with all of those. Plus, I love Rogue One.
And I feel like for fitting in that time period too, it's got to be so hard to create new ships for movies or TV shows or whatever Star Wars wants to do while still seemingly have a purpose.
Yeah.
And I feel like they did a good job with the U-wing because that was kind of like a
Yeah.
passenger cargo type ship.
Exactly,
And
yeah.
it really
Transport.
worked out. Yeah. So I really like that as well. It did kind of start to make me question a little bit because I was like, okay, like Y-wing, spot on.
Yeah.
A-wing, X-wing, I could definitely see it. U-wing,
The
Yeah,
front, and then that's
it's
about
there.
it. There's
Yeah,
no
yeah.
curve in the
I'm
back.
like, okay, I definitely see where you're getting it from, but we are straining. And then
Wait
wait
till
until we
use-
talk about the B-wing.
I was gonna wait,
But-
yeah, the B-wing. Are we going to talk about the B-wing? Because that one is.
We will be, but the
Oh,
U-wing,
are we?
the wings can go up front or back
Mhm.
behind and turn into an N-wing, which they don't ever call it an N-wing, but maybe you should when it's in that configuration.
That was your number 3.
Yeah.
I did my number.
My
3.
number 3. My number 3 is the Fondor Hullcraft from Andor.
Yeah.
Luthen Rael's ship.
This is a great ship.
And I always liked it. First off, I don't know if we talked about this before on the podcast, but we did at one point talk about like the regulation of ships in this universe.
Mhm.
Like, are you allowed to have guns? Are you not? And I like the Fondor because it kind of explains that a little bit.
Mhm.
Not the regulation aspect, but the fact that there are ships that don't have any sort of like visible weapons or anything. It's kind of flying under the radar. But I like his ship obviously because it has like secret guns that comes up and everything. It has a whole bag of tricks hidden up its sleeve, which I really like and can be very like cheesy and campy so easily. But obviously this
See-
was an Andor and
See James Bond.
Yes.
yes,
Like
exactly.
the headlights go down and there's just like
Smoke screen.
massive.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a turret comes out.
But obviously they did it so well, and the little AI droid, is it a droid that drives his ship that he talks to? I don't think it's a droid for some reason.
I agree. It is the Fondor.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's like some sort of like AI program or something because it is the ship that he's talking to. I don't know. I think it's super cool though.
that's
I
a
also-
really cool idea
yeah.
for a ship in Star Wars to have it sentient and be able to talk to you. Sentient to an extent.
Yeah.
But to have
I
a
like the way it
droid
looks, though.
built in like that.
It's great. It's sleek.
Yeah.
It's darker. It's spooky. I love that. It feels like, I don't know, when we first see the Millennium Falcon in Solo, for some reason seeing his ship reminds me of that moment when it's like nighttime. I feel like when you see the Fondor, I don't know, it's cool and crisp. I don't know. I just like love that moment when you see it every single time, and I feel like that it resonates. I feel like you almost can feel yourself in that moment. I like that.
So I'm shooting from the gun here because I haven't seen the first couple episodes of Andor in a while.
You in the
Luke,
hip?
correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the first time you see Andor,
Mhm.
or you see the ship in Andor, you kind of you don't get to like study it very well,
Mhm.
but you do see him like kind of in the cockpit a little bit, and then the first good glance you get of it is from Andor's perspective when
Mhm.
he kind of steps on the first time, and then he kind of takes it in. And yeah, I feel like they do a good job of showing that. It's a good
Yeah.
contrast from everything that Andor knew too. You know, all these broken down, rusty, barely working
Yeah.
ships to the Fondor.
Yeah, it's like a sleek but functional and badass ship.
Yeah.
He also has that cool bathroom vanity that opens up, and then you think like, oh, that's a really cool shelf function stuff, and then he flips the mirror, and you're like, oh my god, it's a sink. This is great.
And it's where he hides his toupees.
Yeah, it really is like a rock star tour bus kind of.
Can you imagine the custom miser who did that job, and he was like, all right, so I want hidden rockets and a toupee holder. I'm sorry, what is this?
That guy 100% got killed after that job, right?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's interesting. Knowing
Yeah.
Luthen, he might,
He had to
probably,
You know,
right?
it's like one of those things where it's like, in The Dark Knight, it makes sense, but it's like, who built the Batmobile? It's like, hey, I did that commission. It's like the Batman only killed one person, which they in the animated series they do explain that as well in the episode The Mechanic.
How
You
do
wanna
they, how
check
do
it
they
out.
explain it?
He just has a guy and plays his payroll basically. He's like a,
Bruce Wayne pays him to not
no,
tell
it's
anyone?
it's like a down on his luck mechanic. Him and his daughter basically build the Batmobile. He says it takes him 6 months to build, and just piece by piece. And so I don't exactly know the transaction how they pay him, but yeah, it's just the Batman and Robin go to this mechanic shop, and I believe then have like their own secret shop, where they do Batmobile stuff.
As you were saying that, the thought occurred to me. Of course, you would source the contractors from multiple different places, and you would have a different arms dealer contractor that would outfit the Fondor with the weapons, and a different from his Coruscant, what's it called? His shop on Coruscant, contact through there, outfit it with all the luxury stuff, and so he would, and they wouldn't know each other. It's all hidden. Yeah.
But someone's got to put it together.
No, the arms dealer puts all the guns on and then makes it look like there are no guns. And then the luxury guy comes in and makes it all luxurious, and he doesn't know that there are guns, and he thinks he's just doing it for a luxury shopkeeper.
Oh, so you're thinking that the ship's already for my mind it was like custom for some reason, but yeah, that makes sense that it would be like, here's a ship, put guns on it now. Here's
So this
Oh,
doesn't really apply at all because the Fondor is real and the moon landing was not. However, part of the conspiracy is like people say like, oh, but so many people worked on the ship, like that the
Mhm.
rocket ship that made it to the moon, like we would know if it's fake. And the argument against that says that like the jobs that build the rocket were so like broken down into small parts.
Yeah.
That like they all think that they built one thing when really like all of them were doing nothing and they just thought like they were contributing to something.
well, exactly. That's the thing too. Is like if you're really gonna, we don't have to go to moon landing, but if you did,
no, let's stay on,
if you
on topic
if
here.
you did, you could always say, I mean, would you put it past the government to make that conspiracy to, which is why it's such an interesting conspiracy, because I don't think any of us would put it past the government to be able to be like, we're gonna fool these people so much that they're not even gonna realize that there's a possibility this could be fake.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I think if the moon
The
landing
truth is
was
out there.
faked, they would have killed Buzz Aldrin by now. Just another loose end. He could have died
He's
by
a loose
natural.
cannon too.
Yeah, he could have died by natural causes under plausible deniability if the government wanted to slip him a heart attack one day.
Hmm.
10
too
years
obvious.
ago.
You can't. Can't do it.
He's old. He's got to be mid-90s by now, right? Our producer is waving us on for the moon landing talk.
Yeah, but one last thing is probably gave him a serum so he lives forever, and that was a trade-off. He wouldn't say anything. Have you seen this one last thing? Have you seen this conspiracy theory now that aliens aren't real? Because the government, the U.S. government was like, aliens are real, basically. I mean, in very layman's terms. But now people are like, well, if they say it's real, there's no way it is.
Yes.
And though it's like so funny to be like, oh my God.
Yeah, that was like one of the funniest things. What else was going on at that time? There was so much happening just like in our country and culture and everything that like for the longest time everyone was all about aliens. Like aliens are real, aliens are real. Then the government's like, hey guys, aliens are real. And everyone was just like, no.
It's the equivalent of like when you're playing something and someone's like, hey, look at this, look at this. You're like, no. Level 32 Nazi zombie. Don't have time for you right now.
exactly.
Well, I think that was during COVID, was it? I forget. But it
Is that
was
what it
almost
was?
exactly
It was-
like
it was
that.
during
like
a lot
it
of
was like a
stuff. I
year
was
and a half
like-
ago only, I think.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh,
It happened at a time where like somehow that was like the least important news. And everyone was like, nah, we don't care anymore.
I think it was, not to get really dark, but I think it was when Gaza was happening last October.
Oh, maybe.
Wasn't it right around there?
No, it was before that.
I thought it was a lot earlier than that too, but I don't remember exactly.
What happened? I thought it was, well, whatever. All right, moving on. That was all of our number threes, right? Number 2, Matthew.
The X-Wing. My friends,
Reliable. Like oldie but a goodie.
here's me coming in as old reliable. I love the X-Wing.
You are
It's
talking
just
about the T-65 X-Wing, right?
Just I mean Luke specific, I think yeah.
The T-70 X-Wing is its successor from the sequel era.
I'm
And
going-
it looks almost the exact same, but like the engine goes up. There's not 4 engines. There's 2 engines. And it splits in half, which is like
Honestly,
different, but not really.
just because I don't say I'm a purist, but like I think Luke's X-Wing is the best example of the X-Wing. I like how it's grimy. I like that it's dirty. I love the cream and orange colors on it. It feels like, if the N1 is like a hot rod, I feel like the X-Wing is just like, I don't know, your like sports car that is a little bit older. It's like a bit of a muscle car, maybe 70s, like Cutlass Supreme. It can go fast, it can shoot. It's, you can fit 2 people in it, but I like it.
I agree. This was pretty high on my list also, and the iconography, the cool factor, playability, its presence in video games, everything. The
You
sound
want it to be in
design,
it. Yes, yeah.
the sound design.
Yeah.
In Alphabet Squadron, which takes place after in the New Republic era, like the Mandalorian, the X-Wing pilot gets the first T-70 X-Wing from the
Mhm.
sequel era, and she talks about how it's like, oh, these features are such an upgrade and so cool. And in my head, I'm like, it's cool that you're like bridging the gap between those 2
Mhm.
X-Wings because they are different, but also like, why are we forcing these X-Wings to be different? They're the same.
Yeah.
It's an X-Wing. The sequels could have done so many things differently, and they didn't. They brought back X-Wings, which is fine, but if you're bringing it back, you don't have to change it.
It's the
Say
classic.
how you really feel, Luke.
It's yeah.
How do
why
you feel
change
about the
it?
ships in the sequels?
They're all the same. I mean, that's just the whole structure of the sequels. It's all the same as the original trilogy. But even with so, you could have done different ships. The A-Wing is literally the same. They didn't even bother having the number of engines on it like they did the X-Wing. But
yeah.
I said the bomber earlier before we started recording, but I don't think anyone has that on their list.
mm-mm.
That's cool. I like the bomber.
I don't dislike it.
It's a unique design. It,
is
holds all of those
a
bombs
unique
in it.
design.
And
Yeah.
it quite literally drops all those bombs on it. I don't know. I think it's cool. I'll throw it out there as an honorable mention. I know we're not at that point yet, but it didn't make my top 9 that I originally had. Yeah, I don't even know what other new ships are in the sequels. If you're not counting speeders, you're not going to count the speeders from Crate.
I have as an honorable mention Kylo Ren's command shuttle that he uses in The Force
Oh,
Awakens.
the command shuttle.
Command shuttle's great.
That's a cool one just because I like the dramatic flair of like the cockpit and seating area and stuff is like the same size as any other ship, but the wings are just 6 or 8 times larger than any other ship. Like it looks
It's
like
power.
the Tidarium shuttle from Return of the Jedi,
Mm-hmm.
and which no one has that either. It's like obviously inspired by that. And I don't know if I like it better or worse, but I definitely like that they just. It looks like we joked about that last time. You drag your mouse and like make bigger all the
Yeah.
way.
It's just Kylo Ren screaming more.
Yeah.
They needed the same amount of wingspan, but with less wings, so they got rid of the fin in the middle and just made the 2 taller.
None of the wings make sense, but that's okay.
That was a sidetrack from Matt's number 2, right? So
Yeah.
Luke, number 2.
It goes right into my number 2, the A-Wing. I like the A-Wing just a little bit better. Actually, I know I had the A-Wing at 5 and the X-Wing at 4, but
Wow, your list really got
it
screwed.
did. The video game Star Wars Squadrons
Mm-hmm.
in VR. I remember this game came out in 2021, I want to say, and it was right in between books 2 and 3 of the Alphabet Squadron because it fit in so perfectly. And oh my god, Vanguard Squadron talks about Alphabet Squadron, and then in the third Alphabet Squadron book, they talk about Vanguard Squadron.
They do talk about it quite a bit. I didn't realize Vanguard's what the book is about, or the
Ye-
game.
Yeah, and it's awesome. And you fly the A-Wing, B, X, Y, and U-Wing, and then all the TIE ships also. But there's a setting for VR, and it works so well. And it is, with the exception of Star Wars Celebration, I'm trying to think, maybe the Force Awakens premiere, but no. That week that Star Wars Squadrons was really popular was my favorite time as a Star Wars fan in my entire life. It was so perfect. The way, and the A-Wing in particular, because it has more windshield, so to speak. I don't know what the pilot phrase is for it, but there's more visibility out your top and like top left and behind you than in the X-Wing or U-Wing or B or Y-Wing. The Y-Wing in particular. That's why I don't like the Y-Wing, because there's such low visibility, which is not something you really think about when you're just watching the game or playing with a toy. But when you're literally in the cockpit, like in this VR game, and it's so well made. It's a horrible experience to be in the Y-Wing, and the A-Wing is faster. I mean, canonically and like in video games and stuff, it's faster. It's the kind of like the the glass cannon, so to speak, in video game terms. It's weaker and faster and hits harder, and that's just a lot more fun to fly, in my opinion, in the Star Wars Squadron game as it is, and that's why it's so high on my list.
See, my preference for the Y-Wing is not based on the video game Squadrons at all. However, when I came to your house that one weekend and I did get to try it, first off, I was only able to play it for like at most 30 minutes because it's kind of nauseating. But I really liked looking at the inside of the ships because I'm just looking around at the cockpit and I'm like, oh, what does this button do? What does that button do? Can I touch this thing right there? And then when you're in the cockpit and you're just looking around at space, for the most part, I was playing some level where I was like flying around in debris in outer space. And so it was like, it was kind of cool, but I got used to it after a bit. I was much more interested in just looking at the ship. That's all I want to do. I just want to sit in one of these ships.
That game is so perfect for it. Oh, it is such an amazing experience. I remember it was 2021 because it was shortly after Max, you and I, and some of our family went to Galaxy's Edge, and we rode the Smuggler's Run ride a lot, which was a lot of fun. But now it's like, I'm not gonna spend hundreds of dollars to go buy a ticket at Disney and fly to Orlando when I can literally have almost that same experience in my own living room.
It's
It's
interesting, yeah.
as good as Smuggler's Run. That game, it burned like a flare in terms of how good and popular it was. It was like 1 week and everyone loved it, and then there was not that much content and it died pretty fast. But not before they came out with an expansion with the TIE Defender and B-Wing, which was really exciting. And that's how I got to learn about how cool a gyroscopic cockpit is firsthand. But God, I loved that game. I've talked about it before with other friends. It's my favorite video game of all time. It's probably got less than 1% of my total hours on a video game just because it was such a rise and die so fast kind of thing. But that week, there was nothing like it.
Now, how would you rank your top 3 favorite A-Wing pilots? We're talking Tally from The Last Jedi, Will Lark, and the guy who suicide bombs the Superstar Destroyer at the end of Return of the Jedi.
Ooh, Green Leader.
Yeah.
He's good. Him second, Tally third, and Will Lark first. I mean,
What a
Will
weird ass
Lark,
order you just went in.
Will Lark number 1, obviously. He's a hero. He's so cool.
I'd put Will Lark as a close number 2. I did like the books quite a bit, but that's like my favorite scene in Return of the Jedi.
Really?
Yeah. When the shields are down at the last second, and then they're like, it's too late, and then the Green Leader's barrel rolling into it.
That is how they get how they destroy the Superstar Destroyer, which if that didn't happen, I mean, we talked just before about how massive of a ship that is. Like, it would have been not as much of a problem as destroying the Death Star, but still pretty substantial. You can't let
But it
that
had
one
to-
survive.
It had to be the command bridge, though, because that's where all the leaders were. I mean, anywhere else, they presumably could have, like, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, like cut it off or other place in the ship. They have
Mm.
doors that they can seal to
Yeah.
prevent that type of stuff. I don't know. It was perfect. It was
We
the
should-
perfect sacrifice.
We should have an episode on Alphabet Squadron soon. That book series is fantastic.
We should do it soon then, because I just finished it, so I still pretty fresh in the noodle. All right, my number 2 is the Ghost from Rebels and a scene in Ahsoka in live action.
Mhm.
I love the Ghost. Obviously, we talked about how I got the toy Ghost from the HasLab project, and I'm still waiting to get it. I'm super excited for it, and I think it's super cool. It's like the Millennium Falcon. It kind of fits my OCD a little bit better because it's a little more symmetrical. It has a fun bonus ship, which is the Phantom, which is kind of a different thing. I mean, you have like escape pods and stuff in other
Mhm.
ships, but this is like more of like a true second ship built into the original one.
Which is what
And-
the N1 should have been for Mando.
Yes. And it just seems super practical. I mean, every time you see the inside of the ship, you see like their living bunks and everything. Like, it just
Yes.
seems like a ship that you could live on, you know?
Mhm.
That's we'll talk about on my number 1, which I feel like I have some like disagreements, which is why I like this one a little better. But the Ghost is so practical, and the fact that I feel like you know your way around that ship already. Like if someone showed me a schematic of it, I'd be like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense that the bunk should be there. That I feel like I like that. What?
It's kind of the equivalent to like walking into a suburban house. You're just like, oh, okay, yep. I'm guessing that basement stairs are there.
Yes.
That's a bathroom. Okay, I get it.
Like again, not to dive too far, but I feel like the Millennium Falcon, spoiler, is like Jerry's apartment in Seinfeld. We're like, well, no, the hallway wouldn't make sense because the kitchen's there. Like, like that's like that theory for me. Anyway, go on, Max.
No, that's it. I love the Ghost. I got to be honest, a lot of it is tied to nostalgia. Even though I watched Rebels much later in my life, I was not a kid growing up on Rebels by any means.
I mean, it came out in 2014.
Yeah, so I was already 21.
You were thinking about grad school.
Yeah. I was in law school when I started watching Rebels. But anyway, maybe that's why I like Rebels so much. Actually, that was my escape during that 3-year period. I should think about that.
No, it's probably because you loved law school so much that you just kept good times rolling.
Yes, just like why we all love Burger King so much now. 'Cause it's so good.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. I have it. Unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot to say about it because it's kind of like a no notes type situation to me. It's the Ghost.
I had the Ghost ranked a little bit higher than the Millennium Falcon. Both got knocked down on my list, but the Phantom is just that one leg up on the Millennium
Yeah,
Falcon
cool.
that makes it better in my mind.
Yeah. Well,
If you were
I have something
to
to say about that, but we'll wait.
if you were to resell the Ghost though, it would be a little bit of downgrade value because Sabine just fucked the shit up out of with graffiti all over the place.
No,
The
it's
re-
art.
You have to
She's
repaint that.
upgraded it. That's only upselling.
Having looking for a
Upping the
house again,
resale.
that's what I'm thinking about. I'm like, I want to paint that. I got to paint that.
All right. Well, that takes us to our number ones. But first, let's do a couple honorable mentions, starting with myself, because why the hell not? I'm going to throw out the B-Wing. I feel like we already mentioned it 100 times without actually saying it. But yeah, the B-Wing, right? That's
Love
cool.
it.
It freaks
Gyroscopic
me out. I
pit.
don't like it as much.
How the hell they called that a B-Wing? It is definitely an uppercase I-wing, right?
I don't see the
it
B.
is.
Yeah.
Not the B.
But anyway, other than that, small grievance. The B-Wing is very interesting. The gyroscopic cockpit is very cool. You're on one end, which is different than Ahsoka's
Mhm.
ship because it's gyroscopic, but like your wing is all on one side of you, and then you can put it all to the other side.
think
Like
about-
Ahsoka's is still
Symmetrical.
symmetrical.
Think about that insurance policy. How many wrecks that someone gets in there just flopping the whole thing over.
I have terrible spatial awareness too. I would be hitting stuff all the time.
Yeah, there are death tolls around those. Right?
But also talking
Yeah.
about like utility and like what it's used
Yeah.
for and everything, and how the B-Wings like lasers work to be like kind of like a big cannon type thing. So it's different than a bomber. You know, it's not a Y-wing,
Mhm.
but it's still like heavy artillery, so to speak. I don't know. They did a good job with differentiating it, making it kind of kooky. When's the first time we see a B-Wing? Return of the Jedi?
Mhm.
Yeah. So anyway, that's an honorable mention that I have. Another honorable mention that I have is specifically Moff Gideon's TIE fighter.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if all TIEs do it. I don't think that they do. But the first time that we saw Moff Gideon land his TIE and his wings folded out, that was just one of those things that I think Matt and I were
Yeah.
watching it together, and we were just kind of like, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
It's such a small thing, but like that makes so much sense. Because
Yeah.
you think about how you land a TIE fighter on a planet, and it's
Yeah.
like if you're not like ready to get off and someone's there to help you with a ladder or something, like you're just hosed.
You're toast.
Yeah.
That's true.
That's
Yeah,
a
that's
great
cool.
honorable mention. I couldn't remember what was so special about Moff Gideon's TIE fighter. I was thinking about all the different variants.
Yeah,
and
it's the collapsible wings.
yeah, that's
Very
cool.
You should know that your kid has a Moff Gideon TIE fighter toy with the collapsible wings.
Yeah, I play with that. That's true.
Matt, honorable mentions.
I have one honorable mention, and I'll yield my time, and it is kind of going off the speeder debate, and it's the cloud cars from
Oh,
Empire.
jeez. Those look spacefaring,
That's
right?
a ship, yeah. How high is Cloud City up in the sky?
That's
I
what I'm
mean,
saying. Yeah, I agree. It's I
yes, that's a
Well,
ship.
that's not why. I mean, Cloud City is open to the air.
Yeah, but I'm saying like it's first off, it's closed cockpit, right? So presumably it's airtight, and you're already so far off the ground. I'm sure that thing can go a little bit higher into the atmosphere or into outer space or whatever.
yeah, but man, you're
No, but
going
it's our-
slow.
It's in atmosphere, though. The difference is in atmosphere.
But just
or
because
not
you've
in
only seen it
atmosphere.
in atmosphere doesn't mean that it can't go in atmosphere. My point is it's so high up in the atmosphere that I think it's reasonable to conclude that it can go a little bit higher into outer space.
From what I know about planes, which is admittedly little, it's my understanding that the difference between any amount of atmosphere and no atmosphere is substantial.
Well,
Good
once again, our brother is currently upset that he's not talking.
Like, I know planes fly like 30,000 feet in the air, but even with the less atmosphere up there, I'm pretty sure they would not be okay with no atmosphere up in space.
What do you think the suicide rate's like on Cloud City? Well, I guess it wouldn't be on Cloud City. It'd be underneath Cloud City.
All right, we took a turn. Let's discuss.
Just because opportunity.
Opportunity, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a thing, right? I mean, like the Golden Gate Bridge is infamous for having a
Yeah.
high death toll because of that.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I don't
Anyway,
know.
the cloud car, I think for me is also a toy that I would love to have had. It's just you can fit two figures in it. It's stupid as hell. It's inconvenient.
So does it fly like the robots in Pacific Rim, where the two people both are flying the thing, or is one a sidecar and all the controls are in the other side?
That's what I assume it's like, or one of them is like the navigator while the other one is the pilot itself.
I have a theory
Okay.
that is actually not the cloud car. That was a cloud car in training. They just had a new guy, and that was just how the instructor rides with them. The normal
So you're
cloud
just
car,
there's a little piece of metal.
yeah,
basically
the normal
that's
cloud
separating
car
you.
doesn't have the side piece. It's just a single
It's just
unit.
one of
That's
them.
really
Yeah.
funny. I
Like
also
that-
think that is the only ship in the original trilogy, which is saying a lot. And I'm gonna die on this hill now and say it. But that is the only ship that looks like it's from the 70s. Like I feel like the X-wing, all of these things are kind of classic and timeless, and they could fit in almost in any sort of like it makes sense now. But if you saw the cloud car in a movie, you'd be like, oh well, that was clearly made in the 70s. There's
Hmm.
no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, it's a good opportunity to do that because it's like the only ship in the original trilogy that's not an Alliance ship or an Empire ship. I guess
Yeah.
there's Slave One and Millennium Falcon. Never mind. Cut that. Yeah, I'm wrong.
Luke, honorable mention.
Yes, the Soulless One, which I did not know that was the name of it when I looked it up. It's General Grievous's starfighter
Mm.
from Episode 3 that
That's
Obi-Wan commandeers after he kills him and flees Utapau. Because, and we kind of talked about this with the N1 starfighter, the difference in aesthetic between the original trilogy and the prequels. The original trilogy is very 70s, as we've been saying, and the prequels were very like 1920s and 30s.
Mhm.
And I get that with like the sleek and really curved design in the N1 starfighter and a whole bunch of other things in the prequels, but that ship in particular looks like it's plucked right out of the 1920s, like you were saying with the cloud car.
Yeah.
And then my other honorable mention is the Vulture droids, also in the prequels. That is just hilarious. That they can be droids that just are ships. Like we kind of talked about it with the Fondor, but they look cool. They're cool ships, good toys. But when they like pop up their head and look to the left, it's like, what an advantage. That is so cool. And then they can walk on their little pincers like a praying mantis, and they're like walking around ships and stuff. I love that design.
I'm debating how big of a deal I should make right now that you got mad at me for including a speeder, but you're talking droids.
Do you think
No one can even fly it.
Yeah, do you think capacity implies ship?
Yeah, it has to be something that could be flown.
It flies.
Does it though? 'Cause
Superman isn't a ship just
Are-
because he flies.
No, is a drone a ship?
Is a drone a plane?
Yeah,
No.
Does
not
a
like a
plane
not
have
a
to have
small
passengers?
one.
Why-
Is
Well,
an
you're saying-
airplane a plane?
Is it?
Not an airplane, a paper airplane.
I was like, is it an airplane? I'm
Sorry.
like, yeah, Lucas, I'm pretty sure it's a plane.
A paper airplane. That's still a plane.
No.
No, that's not.
No.
I mean, like a
This is-
drone that
the
is
Vulture
like
droids
massive,
are not ships. They are droids. I'm glad that you like them.
Ooh, there's droids that can fly. So they're
yeah, that's what I'm
not
saying.
a
But
ship,
that doesn't
though.
make you. I mean, R2 can fly too. He has his little jets.
He is not a ship.
No, of
He-
course not.
if you-
I do
he's
think
a
he's
droid.
spacefaring.
If you could jump on that sucker, he's a ship. Just straddling him.
I mean, don't they do that with Chopper several times?
They do that with Chopper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, astromechs are not ships. They're droids.
Okay. Well, I'm glad I got you to come around to that. I will edit out that whole rant. All right.
I said astromechs. Vulture droids, I think, are still ships.
Oh my word.
It's different. They have guns. They engage in ship-to-ship
The gun
combat.
doesn't. Speeders don't have. Land speeders don't have guns. That's not what makes them a ship.
I agree. Land speeders aren't ships. That was my point.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense for your position. It doesn't make sense for mine. That doesn't make sense. No.
I would love to see you in court.
Oh, I fuck up a lot. All
There
right.
are many murderers going for you.
They make so many excellent points.
A lot of innocent men on death row.
I actually wasn't there, so I don't know.
All right, moving on to our number ones. Matthew.
You said a reasonable doubt?
I've created a lot of unreasonable doubts.
my number one is the Millennium Falcon. Again,
The
just-
Han Solo era, or the Rey era, or the Lando era.
let's go Han Solo era,
I figured
just
for
because-
posterity, I wanted
yeah.
to get it out there.
but then also just because he really didn't take care of it. It seems like he's
Yeah.
always fixing that sucker. But I think the Millennium Falcon, like I said, is a mystery. I like the Ghost is almost too symmetrical for me. Where I like a little bit of that funkiness, where it's like, oh, it's just a circle. Plus, it's got like this other cockpit up here, and the guns make no sense because you're upside down. Like, it doesn't make any sense, and that's why I like it so much. Is like, if you dropped me in the Millennium Falcon, it'd be so hard to navigate where anything is at, and I think that's what keeps going back to it mentally. Is like when you're like falling asleep, like part of, and you're like trying to get yourself to sleep. Like one of my like routines is trying to figure out what the map of Millennium Falcon would be. Like when you're entering, like where would you go?
So did it mess
What's
you up
the-
in Solo when you saw more of it, like the living quarters, the closet, and everything like
Well,
that?
kind of, yeah, exactly. And every single time you see it, it is a little bit weird. But at the same time, I still don't know where that all that connects. Like, so you see more of the ship, but I'm like, there's so much in between that. I just
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, Jerry's apartment is a good analogy.
Right? Yes.
It's like, yeah, you get it, but it makes no sense.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I like all the lore around it and everything that you were saying. I like how when George Lucas was kind of designing it with people, he described it like, oh, he wanted it to be like a flying saucer, right? Then he's
Yeah.
like, oh, but I want to give it a little bit of direction. So then they added the two little nubs sticking forward,
Yeah.
and then they added the cockpit, and he said, oh, but I kind of want it to be a little quirky too, so I
Mhm.
want to make it asymmetrical, so they put it on the side, and he was like, I like that. So it's a very interesting story and all that, but other than that, I don't really have anything to say about the Millennium Falcon because yeah, it's kind of the GOAT. I mean,
Yeah.
it is Star Wars.
I believe it's not canon, but in some comic or reference material, there's a picture of the Millennium Falcon with its like original intended purpose, quote unquote, and it's a hauler craft, and it's got a cargo crate in the little nub, and then the cockpit's on the side, so you can see around the cargo crate. And it just scratched my brain in such the most pleasant way. It's like, oh, that makes so much sense.
That is interesting. Well, what about the escape pod though? Because in Solo, that was the
Exactly.
Escape pod.
I don't think it's canonical. I think that
Hmm.
came out before Solo. But the escape pod was a aftermarket attachment also. So maybe he just put that there instead.
I was very hesitant about the Millennium Falcon in Solo when I first saw the trailer because it was just like way too different. Like it was everything
Crisp.
you know it to be, but it was just so clean that you're like, this is not the same thing at all. I don't
Mhm.
like this. But then they did a really good job with it in Solo.
Mhm.
Solo, obviously, really liked. But they did a good job of kind of bridging the gap at the end when by the end it is like basically completely destroyed.
Mhm.
And Matt, I wanted to push back on you when you said that he didn't do a good job of upkeeping it.
Mhm.
For the condition that he got it in, he did a pretty good job of holding it together all those years.
Yeah, he's not some moof milker that bypassed the compressor like
That's true.
Yeah.
Ungar Plutt.
But at the same time, I feel
And
like
he knows that this goes there and that goes there.
again,
No,
as
no.
all three as homeowners, right? It's like, hey, there's a crack in my foundation. I'm gonna get it fixed. There's this problem. I'm gonna get it fixed. I don't think he got it fixed.
No, he did it himself. He
Yeah,
did,
that's what I
everything's
mean.
definitely
He did-
jerry rigged.
Yeah,
but
he didn't. You know,
but he got it in the fixer upper stage. It's not like he got this house new and then let it go into
I know,
decay.
but he could have
Yes.
flipped it. That's all I'm saying. He didn't flip it. He didn't.
Well,
And how,
that's his
He's not-
home.
how-
yeah,
House
he's
is
not
on
a
the brain.
flipper. That's a different thing.
not
It-
actually flipping, but he could have put that love and mentality and care into it.
He loves it in his own way. It's his love language is not sheen and class
Yeah.
like Lando.
Not
If
everyone
you-
has this greedy capitalist mind as you,
If
Matthew.
you saw
Some
his
people just love
bedroom
what they have because they have it.
on the ship, I guarantee it's riddled with McDonald's Big Mac containers and tube socks.
I won't refute that.
Thank you.
All right. I'll move on to my number one. My number one is the Slave One. It is Boba Fett's ship. It is by far my favorite. It is the most unique design. I can only think of it as an ironing, an iron. It's just an iron.
An ironing thing for your shirts.
What are those called? An iron. My brain exploded too much though because then I was like, we actually saw an iron in The Last Jedi, and it's one of my favorite shots of the movie. Anyway, it looks like an iron, but it's got wings, but the wings don't really make sense, and it has also a gyroscopic cockpit. Is that gyroscopic? That's still gyroscopic. And it kind of like tilts forward and back, but it's a unique design. I really like how the cockpit is like it's like your whole body basically. So like
Mhm.
it's very intimidating. I feel like if you were just like looking straight at it, that you're just like looking at someone's body. Like you're not just like seeing somebody's like bust up like you would like if someone's like
Mhm.
driving a car or something like that. It's to me much more intimidating. The weapons on it obviously are crazy. This what are they called? The sonic bombs or whatever.
Seismic charge.
Seismic charges, very satisfying. Watching Boba Fett blow away the Nikto speeder gang in the Book of Boba Fett from the Slave One, beautiful.
Mhm.
Every time I see it in action, it is just so captivating. I love looking at it. I had a Slave One toy when I was younger, and it was one of my favorite toys. And it comes with Boba Fett.
Yep. This ship confuses me, and it still confuses me. I would not like to fly it. Anything that
No.
I have to get in and lay down first, like a rocket ship, not a fan.
Yeah.
It looks cool as hell, and I agree with everything
It'd
you're
be a
saying. I
huge
just
learning curve. At
not
first,
for me.
yeah. The
And
thing
the-
that confuses me is the size of it because it doesn't seem that big. But then when you do see the inside
Yeah.
for the first time in Mandalorian season 2, and you
Mhm.
see like the ship spinning around them, that inside is spacious.
It's
like
huge,
it
yeah.
seems a lot bigger
It's
than I
fitting
thought
a
it was
lot of
gonna be.
people.
And like,
yeah.
how do you even organize things? Do you organize things like, just say you have like a kitchen or something? Do you organize things like cups for
Go-
when it's stationary?
You got to strap it all in.
That's
Assume
interesting.
zero gravity.
Like
you know,
anything.
I don't think the Slave One is like an RV like Millennium Falcon is. I don't think he lives in the Slave One. I think that's more of like an exclusively like bounty hunting type ship. It has its utility and it's impractical beyond that, but it's super practical for bounty hunting.
I agree that it's not made like an RV for living in, but I think Boba Fett still lives in it.
Yeah.
I bet he
that's-
sleeps in it more often than he doesn't.
I agree.
I mean, I can't picture him in a hotel, so like, yeah, I have to agree, but I don't think that's true. I don't know. Also, the first time we see Slave One, it's in Empire, is it not? When he flies after the Millennium Falcon, which is such a great, I think, first way of seeing it because it's floating away with all the junk, and it's so odd
Mhm.
that you don't even see it at first.
Yeah.
I've seen Empire 100 times, and every time it's still kind of like, oh, there it is. You know, like, I know it's coming, but you're still looking for it, type thing. I don't
Yeah, I like that scene too.
know. Anyway, Luke. round
Number
us out.
1, favorite ship in all of Star Wars, the Razor Crest. It's not
Ah.
recency bias. It's been long enough. This is a fantastic ship.
Yeah.
It's like the Millennium Falcon, the Ghost, Slave One, but just a little bit cooler. I don't have as much to talk about it as all these other seemingly random ships that I have so much specific memories for. This is just a gut thing. That's my favorite one.
I thought you gave me a look. Sorry.
No.
I thought my phone was dying. I love the Razor Crest also. That's why we all are not sour on the N1. It just doesn't make any sense. And so I feel like the Razor Crest is great. We all got excited for it when it came out, and then obviously they just blew it up. But
it's-
I mean, this
It's coming
also
back.
is it?
I think it's going to be in the.
Presumably, that's what Zeb and Mando are in that
Oh my
little
god! I
trailer
didn't even
of
think
the
about that.
Mandalorian movie.
Whoa.
I think it's coming back, and I'm super excited for it because I think they kind of realized the same thing. I think
Yeah.
they're like, wow, we really had a good thing with the Razor Crest.
Yeah.
And they can bring it back, and it could just be a second Razor Crest because the Razor Crest wasn't the name of the ship. It was just the name of the model.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the thing that I like about the Razor Crest, now, here I'm going to go with my little pitch, right? Where does Mandalorian go from here? Din Djarin is a human. Obviously, he's aged, and he's going to die well before Grogu does. What's Star Wars going to do with Grogu? Well, let me tell you what they should do. They should have one last mission in which they go deep into outer space, unknown regions, they get lost, they run out of fuel, whatever it is, they don't know what to do, they're stranded in space, and they're both going to die, and Din Djarin makes a sacrifice play where he puts Grogu in carbonite on his ship and tries to activate some sort of beacon, hoping that, in a million years, at some point, somebody's going to find him. And then it ties into the sequels,
Mhm.
post Rise of Skywalker, and somebody is going to come across the ship, find him, unfreeze Grogu, who will still be a child, because everyone wants Grogu to be a child. No one
Mhm.
wants to see a grown Grogu.
Yes.
And Din Djarin is going to pass away, and that's how they're going to address that. That's how I think they should do it.
Interesting.
That's how you get Grogu then into the sequel era.
Yeah, that's how you get Grogu to basically live forever.
Even though he's already gonna
Into any
basically
era.
live
It doesn't
forever,
matter.
yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
little Tony Stark action going on there with Endgame, kind of.
yeah.
I don't hate it. All right. And then they could bring the Razor Crest into any era too, because I assume
Exactly.
that should be freezing
So they can
them in.
blow it up there too. Yeah, the Razor
blow it
Crest
up in
is
any
great.
era.
Yep. And you also know there's a bathroom on there. It's the first bathroom I feel like we've seen in a Star Wars ship. No, they have a closet. I really like. Oh man, should I have put the Bad Batch's ship on there?
The Marauder.
Yeah, the
Mm.
Marauders are really
Havoc
cool.
Marauder. I did not think of that one
I always forget it's called the Havoc Marauder. I
Yeah,
always just think it's
the Marauder. Yeah.
because they're Havoc Squadron. They're all Havoc 1,
Mm.
Havoc 2.
Yeah, the very first episode of The Mandalorian, when the guy asks about the bathroom on the ship,
Mhm.
that was when I knew I liked this show. I was like, finally, we got someone
Yep.
asking the real questions. Where's the bathroom on this thing?
Where's the bathroom? on
Let's
this
get a good look here.
thing? Yeah, exactly.
You guys call it a vac tube? I didn't know that. That makes sense. I like the words in Star Wars when you just instantly know what they're talking about without having to explain it.
Yes.
Like, oh, so and so woke up in the morning and asked for a cup of calf. And I'm
Yep.
like, oh, okay, that's coffee.
Cocaine. Oh.
I got it. But yeah.
Do you think
anyways.
they all have bidets instead of toilet paper?
Yeah,
in-
they're advanced society.
Yeah.
They have to. Sure.
I think we're all going to have bidets instead of toilet paper in just a few more years.
Yeah.
Although it's still not a replacement for toilet paper.
No,
The way you said it.
serves its purpose. But yeah,
You still got to wipe a little. Yeah.
if I go over someone's house and they don't offer me the master bathroom with a bidet, I judge them.
Is that why you don't come over anymore?
That's why when I poop in your toilet, I purposefully leave streaks now.
You walk over with like your tushy attachment. Yeah, hook the sucker up. You got a hose around here.
I gotta run back to the car. My squatty potty's back there too.
You get a full cat thing. Like, anyway, yeah, the
All
Crazy
right.
Request is great.
Does anyone have any force for thought?
I do. I was watching Attack of the Clones, and that's kind of a spoiler because
Attack of the Clones.
the plot point from Revenge of the Sith, where I know obviously they had to fit it into the original trilogy, where they're going to hide baby Luke Skywalker, and Yoda's like, "Oh, take him to his family. They'll never find him there." Like, it's been joked about forever that that's such a terrible idea, and we can make it work and make sense, but no one ever talks about how just one movie before, Padme is being hunted and tried to be killed, and Yoda says, send her to her home. She'll be safe there. But don't use registered transport. Travel as refugees. Whoever's trying to assassinate her will never think to check her parents' house or the Queen's chambers. It's not like they're hiding on Naboo.
Yeah, that's really funny.
And then
That is
Dorme
really interesting.
is like, "Oh, I'm so worried about you. What if they find out that you've left the capital? Well, then my Jedi protector will have to prove how worthy he is, or something like that." So their plan is to hope that the people assassinating Padme don't realize she's left the capital, because she left Jar Jar, who's very clearly not Padme, in her stead, instead of her handmaidens that are literally handpicked to look exactly like Padme, that could have just assumed her identity and stayed in the capital.
And they've done that before. We've seen it.
You know damn well. I mean, Jango Fett, best bounty hunter in the galaxy, the worst bounty hunter in the galaxy, will see Jar Jar, say, "That's not Padme. I should go look for her. Maybe her parents know something." Or maybe someone on Naboo. At least for a spot you go to as Naboo, as the former queen and the current senator for Naboo. Of course that's where she's gonna go.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm Anakin and Yoda says, "Take her there," I'm like, okay, that's a good idea, but have you considered literally anywhere else in the galaxy to hide?
Maybe Jango Fett. Maybe that was Jango Fett's biggest mistake, is that he wouldn't have thought of that, and then Boba Fett learned from his father's mistakes and went and burned Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen. Full circle. It all connects.
That is interesting. You know, people joke about Star Wars is just a big series about daddy issues, and it just shows how prevalent family issues are in Star Wars, that no one would ever think of such a thing. Like, "Oh, we're looking for someone. Did you check his parents' house?" Like, no, come on.
That's not worth
They
it.
wouldn't be there. Let's just go look to random planets instead. That is a good force for thought. That's going to have me thinking for a while.
Yeah.
No one ever thinks to look there.
Mm-mm.
All right.
And Anakin even says, like, "Oh, she's not going to want to leave as the leader of the opposition. She's not going to want to leave the capital." And Yoda says, "Until this mystery is resolved, she must trust our judgment." No, your judgment is flawed. This is a horrible idea, Yoda.
Big mistake.
It's very oversimplistic. Like, oh, they need somewhere to stay. Family.
No witness protection there.
Maybe it's because the Jedi don't have family. That's why they're like, oh, no one would ever think of that.
They just have such a gross misunderstanding
Exactly.
of what family
Everyone
is.
else in the galaxy is like, all right, I guess we'll look. All right. Well, let us know what you think. You can reach out to us at Force for Thought across social media, and you can email us at forceforthought@gmail.com.
See you, Sammy. How weird was that without headphones?
This break here, but that wasn't that weird.
Look at that screaming. This is so different.
That intro that I messed up. You're
Oh.
talking over it. It will take some more editing. You're at least gonna have to like change the volume levels.
Is it
Talking
10?
over it.